there's such a long history of how colonialism and imperialism and white supremacy was created to put Asians in this place of being the model minority and of kind of being in this position where we just like keep our head down and be quiet and kind of comply with the system. And we were taught that that's the way you kind of survive in this society. And so I think being a bad Asian, first of all, is about rebelling against that and being able to stand up for ourselves.
I think you nailed something here, because I love the term bad Asians, because there's two meanings that I always represented. One, welcome back to Big Asian Energy. We are doing a live in studio. Really, this is just like my home, like set up on my couch. Today with Katy Ho. This is very exciting because I don't often get to have people come over and chat in like a more casual setting, but I feel like today is perfect for it because for those of you who don't know, Katy is an author. She's a founder of Bad Asians, and she writes about Asian American experiences and Asian Canadian experiences from that perspective. So this is a chat kind of a vibe. So I'm excited to dive into Katy's journey, your story, where you come from, in all the ways, and just explore what does it mean to be kind of like, what does it mean to rebel? What does it mean to be a bad Asian? So yeah, wherever you want to start.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I think that my journey of starting Bad Asian really started when I was younger.
Okay.
So I grew up as a minority, as like one of the only Asian kids in my school. And I grew up in a very predominantly white city, very conservative. And I think I always had this sense of like just not belonging where I grew up. And I still remember like the first time I felt like othered as a kid was...
Hold on. Okay, so coming back to this, you use the term othered. What does that mean?
Yeah, so being othered basically means feeling like you don't belong in that community. Like there's kind of this like us versus them mentality maybe in certain communities, and feeling othered kind of feels like, oh, the people in that community are the kind of like the default, and you are different from them, so you're an other, and you face like prejudice, discrimination because of your identity, because of being different.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you become seen as somebody other than us when it's created. And I'm guessing that in this context, it has something to do with being Asian.
100%.
Okay,
Yes.
so I think this is an interesting experience because I think that it depends on where you're from. Different people have experienced this in different ways. Like I talked to a lot of what's called like West Coast Asians. West Coast Asians, like we're in Vancouver right now, we're on the West Coast. West Coast Asians often have a completely different experience from East Coast Asians or like Middle Asians, right? So like West Coast Asians are like Vancouver, San Francisco, LA, San Diego, like kind of like everyone on the West Coast. This is where Asians are. I like to say that there's no Asians in Vancouver, and then people look at me like I'm dumb. And then I explain, I'm like, because if you talk to people in Vancouver and you ask them their identity, they don't say they're Asian. They say things like, I'm Chinese, I'm from Hong Kong, right? I'm Korean, I'm Japanese, right? Like we have so many Asians in Vancouver that the word Asian doesn't hold as much of the same meaning. And then you go to like East Coast, like if you're in the US, it's like, you know, New York, Boston. Is Boston East Coast?
I think so. I think that would count.
Yeah, like New Jersey. And then like you start going down, and then like you go all the way down to Florida. And then the experience of being Asian American in those contexts are completely different.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like, and then you have like the people who are like in the middle, who are like, I am like one of 3 Asian people in my entire town. Everyone else is white.
Yeah.
I am just known as like the Asian guy or like the Asian girl, right? So what was your experience like?
Yeah, so I think where I grew up, I guess you would consider it more in the middle, maybe like more like Midwest. And
where are you from?
From Calgary.
Calgary is,
It's very yeehaw.
Yeah. Calgary is like
white.
the Texas of Canada.
Exactly. It's just no matter what, they will always vote conservative, and like that is very much the vibe there.
Yeah.
So yeah, growing up there was definitely a different experience than most of my friends who live here in Vancouver. And so, yeah, I just growing up in that environment and then continually having other experiences like that throughout my childhood, I think it just really shaped my perspectives and like my passion for activism, just because I feel like I could really relate to anyone who goes through any kind of prejudice or discrimination. Especially my parents are refugees as well. And so I think hearing their stories of how they fled from war and seeing all the things that different communities are going through around the world right now, it just makes me realize that that totally could have been me. That totally could have been my family. It's just so much of our life is just based on luck of where you're born or what skin you're born into. And that's not really fair. So yeah, I think as someone who's like privileged enough to grow up in Canada, I feel like it's my responsibility to talk about those issues and rebel against the system as a bad Asian.
Yeah, as a bad Asian.
Yeah.
And I wanna zone in on this, because like, why? I have a guess of based on what I talk about, but like, why is it bad? Why is it a bad Asian thing to speak out about our experiences? Now, I'm not saying this is universal. A lot of people who have never experienced that, they may not realize that this is something that people still to this day experience in a very real way on a daily basis. But going back to like, why is it a bad Asian to speak out?
Yeah, I think as an Asian person, there are so many expectations that are placed on us of how we're supposed to be. So when I think of being a bad Asian, there's kind of 3 levels to it, or like 3 different components to it. There could be more as well beyond these 3. But the ones that I really think about are like, number 1 is, of course, having Asian identity and growing up in the diaspora, like growing up in communities where we're not like the dominant culture, or we don't make up the majority of people. There's like such a long history of how colonialism and imperialism and white supremacy was created to put Asians in this place of being the model minority and of kind of being in this position where we just like keep our head down and be quiet and kind of comply with the system. And we were taught that that's the way you kind of survive in this society. And so I think being a bad Asian, first of all, is about rebelling against that and being able to stand up for ourselves. The second component is the component of gender roles and the expectations that are placed on Asian men and Asian women, and how we're perceived by society. Like for Asian women, for example, we're expected to be like quiet, submissive, which is very far from the truth. But yeah,
100%. Yeah, I find that particular imagery that people come up with, I'm like, if anyone out there is like, oh, like, and I've literally heard this before, where I've had white friends who have told me to my face, like, I love Asian girls. Yes, that exact model. It's exactly who you think would be saying it too. Like, they always look the same. They always have the same exact look. And I don't even need to describe it, because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyone listening knows. It's like, I love Asian girls. Like, and then you dig into like, why do you love Asian girls? Because, of course, what they really mean is like, they have such rich historical culture and understanding and intellect. No, it's never, right? It's always like this imagery of submissiveness and quietness and politeness and all these things. And nowadays they rebranded it, right? Now it's like, they represent traditional values, which is a big eye roll for me every time I hear it. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, clearly you actually have no idea what that whole demographic of Asian girls are truly like when they're not presenting in a context of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's because there is no such thing as a singular identity for Asian women. That's the reality of it. It's an entire culture. In the sense that like there's so many different ways in which we actually show up that it's impossible to say this. But I think you nailed something here. Because I love the term bad Asians, because there's 2 meanings that I always represented. One is that societal element of like, to be a good Asian is we're good at math, we're hardworking, We're pretty quiet. We don't cause trouble.
Yep.
We follow the rules, and we're not socially disruptive.
Yep.
And what is the alternative of a bad Asian are those who don't fit into the model minority, which are like, when you're oppressed, when you are stereotyped, when you encounter racism, you're supposed to laugh it off because your silence is supposed to purchase your belonging. Your assimilation and you giving up your voice was, at the time, was like, in exchange, you get to stay here. And we would treat you almost like one of us. Very conditionally.
And almost.
And almost.
Yeah.
Right? That's the white adjacency term, right? It's like you get to be second best. You get to be close to us. You're not really in our club, but you could grab a plate and wait outside until we're done. And that was always the essence and imagery behind that. Well, that's the deal, right? Like, we let you in here. We grant you this gift of belonging in exchange for your silence. And if you step out of line, that's when you're a bad Asian.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it's so important for us to learn to step out of those lines and like create our own vision for who we want to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, just to finish off my last thought on like the third dimension of being a bad Asian is your family and our parents, and we love our families, but at the same time, they grew up in a different society a lot of the time. They grew up in a different time, and a lot of them maybe have bought into the model minority myth out of survival, or they have their own like very intense expectations of us sometimes. And I think a part of being a bad Asian is also being able to kind of break away from that as well, and like maybe challenge some of those things that our parents taught us that maybe don't serve us the best. Like some of our parents are like, oh, like you should just be quiet and you should behave because that's how you be like a good little boy, a good little girl. And I think that may work when you're a child, but when you grow up under a system that doesn't serve you, I think it's important to unlearn that and also be able to stand your ground and stand up for yourself. So.
Yeah, 100%. Because that is a cultural thing, right? Like, and I think this is where it brings up challenges for people to talk about. I don't know about your experience, but like, I find that there is a part of me and the people I know who find it very uncomfortable, and there's almost like a cringe effect when they hear about these terms. Because they don't want to associate. Like, I've had friends who feel like, I don't want to be around this topic. I don't want to be around it because for them, they're like, one, the system has worked for me. Like, I don't feel like I'm being oppressed. I don't feel like people are outright racist towards me. If they are racist, they're not doing it in my face. They're doing it quietly behind the scenes, whether or not I get that promotion. And most of the prejudice, they might not have ever really had to confront. And they might even think that it doesn't happen, right? Especially if they work in work in fields in which there's a lot of other Asian people around. They're like, my boss is Asian. They never experienced this. So it's not always so outright. But the undertone that exists still has an effect on how we show up. And I think this is where it is that, a lot of these stereotypes that show up are reflected is because, like, personally, I went through years where if you brought up the term and there's like, I have my own internal, like, I went through some deep, like, inner work around this. But there were a lot of years where, like, I fully just didn't want to confront this at all. I just didn't want to face it. If you talk about, like, racism against Asians, I kind of would, like, roll my eyes. And I'm like, there's no racism against Asians. I always like that with my mom. Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Tell me more.
COVID. When COVID happened, a lot of Asian people started getting attacked, right? Very outright. I experienced it. I think like 7 to 8 out of 10 of my friends all experienced it. I had a friend who was followed home. I had a friend who had a hand sanitizer, just like somebody, like literally just a regular person, like was like took like one of those like little squeeze bottles of hand sanitizer and like sprayed her on the SkyTrain.
Wow.
I was spat on.
Wow.
I was like walking out of a drugstore, and there was some guy who came up and was like, "Go back to your own country." And I actually didn't hear him, so I was like, "Huh?" And then he came over and just spat on me, and then said it again, and then walked away. So I came back and I was pissed, and I told this to my mom, and I was like, "This is what's happening." And at the time, I got invited to be a speaker at the anti-Asian hate rally. And I was like, "Mom, I'm going to go speak at the anti-Asian hate rally. Do you want to come? Because, you know, do you want to see this and like talk about this?" And her reaction was like, "Is there racism against Asians?" And I had to be like, yeah. But I think a part of the conditioning is that because we've always been taught that there's a social hierarchy, and that it's our job, and we should be proud to have the job of not fighting back, of taking it, of sacrificing, of swallowing the bitterness. And we really take pride in that, like that we can have the resilience to overcome it, that because on a day-to-day level, we don't face it enough, that we kind of just go, well, I don't want to mess with it because that brings me problems. And what do I want problems? I just want to make money. But like that's such a, like, it's a common thing, but it's hard to argue against for some people, right? So I'm curious, like, for your experience in your family, like, has that come, like, does your parents know that you do this bad Asian topic? What's their opinion of it?
I actually haven't told them yet.
Yeah. That's not a judgment.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Okay, tell me more.
Well, exactly for that reason is like, I don't know if I'm ready to have that conversation yet.
What do you think will happen?
I think there would be probably some concern at first of like, are you safe? Like, is it okay that you're putting yourself out there like that? Because they very much have always wanted to protect me and been like, no, like, just keep your head down, just work hard, don't cause trouble. And so, yeah, I think I will definitely tell them at some point, but I think, yeah, it'll definitely have to be like a long conversation of like, this is important to me and it's important for our community and I feel like I need to do this. And
100%.
I think eventually they'll understand. But yeah, I think it's just going to take some like sitting down and chatting through it.
Let me know if you want support.
Yeah.
Like moral support. We'll like be outside.
I'm really grateful though for my parents because I feel like even like unknowingly, I think they taught me a lot of these values. Like even though they maybe weren't trying to. Yeah. Like my mom she's always been like a very strong woman. She's always been like, don't ever depend on anyone else, like always be independent, like don't let anyone tell you are lesser than just because you're a woman. Yeah. And so I really like took that to heart. Yeah. And just like learning from them about their experiences as refugees, I think gave me so much empathy for other people in the world, and so much understanding of like what people are going through and the privilege that I have. And I also remember during COVID, like seeing all these anti-Asian hate crimes happening. I literally had to deactivate social media because like it gave me panic attacks to even like go online and see what was happening. And I remember I literally was having a panic attack and I was at my parents' house and I just like talked to my dad about it and he gave me a hug. And I just remember him telling me like, yeah, this is what happens to us and like we just have to be strong and like get through it together. But like I think that moment was really meaningful to me because I didn't fully like know if my parents were aware of all of this, but just after talking to him and realizing he's been through this too and he's seen this happen before, like it made me really sad because I was like, damn, we've been going through this for generations. But at the same time, I was like, there's so much solidarity there if we just talk about these issues and like get them out in the open and not avoid it. Yeah.
And I think this is a really important key point here is that like the stuff that your parents had to go through and the parents of so many people I know who are refugees, immigrants, like they faced some real shit. Yeah. You know, I remember reading Vicky Nguyen, who's like who wrote the book Boat Baby, and by the way, if you haven't read the book yet, so good, like shockingly inspirational.
Wow.
And she talked about how like when her family were refugees and trying to make their way into the US, they would carry around like these little gold chains because they had to bribe like actual pirates, real pirates, not like online pirates that we deal with, but like real actual pirates to let them go. And it's like these kind of stories that you realize, wow, like their silence or their preference for us to be safe it's not coming from, and I really want to point this out, it's not coming from like self-protectiveness, even though by definition it is, or like or fear. But like I have so much gratitude for their silence, because if it wasn't for their silence, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But it is also because of their silence that I feel like we have more of a responsibility now to speak up, because we are given the privilege, the platform, and the safety. Like that generation, like imagine being the person who like were a refugee coming over and then like grabbing a mic and talking about racism. Like it would not have been accepted at all. Like you would have faced real life-threatening consequences on a daily basis. Whereas we have the safety now to be able to speak about this. And I personally think there's a responsibility.
I agree. I think it's definitely a privilege, and like we forget that. I think a lot of people take it for granted in a sense of like how good a lot of us have it, but also there's also a lot of Asian communities that are still struggling, still facing hate, still facing high rates of poverty, and like, you know, we kind of leave those people behind if we don't talk about it. And I think it's if we are born with this privilege of growing up somewhere where we have freedom of speech, where we have education platforms, resources, like we should use them to help others.
100%.
Yeah.
Did you see the news recently? Maybe you're
Which
off
news?
of that, but there was that really famous case that was happening during the anti-Asian hate events, where one of the, I would say, the more well-known perpetrators who was recently just let go and was freed, and like there is an outpour right now of outrage of what happens, because we are still seeing the justice system failing to protect people. And I very rarely try to touch upon politics, because my main goal is I want to elevate our voices, and I don't want to allow anyone, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter what their political leanings are, to be influenced and believe that, to be turned away from what they could gain from it because, it's a political messaging. But the reality is that being Asian is by definition a political act, right? Like there is something about the way that we are that, results in these cases that are happening. And to not speak about it in some ways, I think I struggle with this all the time, because I often feel guilty. I'm like, I wish I was doing more. I wish I was saying more. But I'm also afraid, man. Like, I don't want to get stopped at the customs because somebody is going to check my phone and be like, oh, well, and I get blocked. I mean, this is a lot of my livelihood come from the States, Yeah,
and I think it speaks to like how being Asian, is political. And I think there is this myth that we are very apolitical, like that Asians don't care about politics, or we're neutral, or it doesn't impact us. But like when you look at things that are happening right now, or things that have happened throughout history, like there's been so many Asian political movements in history. Like there were so many Asian people who were involved in the civil rights movement. And like I think we've like forget, and unfortunately a lot of that history is erased. But there were Asian people who were fighting for our rights, like all the way up till now. And so, like, I think if we feel like we shouldn't care about politics, it's a very privileged position to have.
Oh my gosh,
I think we absolutely should, like, regardless of what you think, I think just like care about these things. Pay attention.
At the very least, go do your own research, go read about it, look it up, understand it. The way I see it is like, understand the platform on which you currently stand that allows you to not care.
Exactly.
And having that, it sounds ironic in its own sense, but like having that awareness allows you to appreciate perhaps your own experiences at a deeper level. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that Big Asian Energy is officially out, and you can go and pick it up anywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, etc. If you've ever felt like there's something stopping you from reaching your full potential, if you've ever felt like you want to have that unstoppable charisma and confidence in the work that you do, as well as just the way you show up in life, this might be the book for you. It is a book that is jam-packed with research studies, advice, case studies, stories, and of course, so many different techniques and takeaways, including communication, as well as mindset, as well as confidence, and all the other topics out there. It just won one of the best books of 2025 on Amazon. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go take a look. And finally, if you have a few seconds, can I also ask you to leave a quick review for Big Asian Energy? It not only means the world to us to hear from you, but more importantly, it does absolutely help us in reaching more audiences. I hope you're having an amazing day, and thanks again. Can I take a sudden and very sharp left turn here and go in a completely different direction?
Let's do it.
I'm curious to hear about relationships, because we brought this up one time. But because your work is in a lot of the people that you support as in your work are women, and you talk about feminism as a major topic. I'm curious to hear what your experience has been, not personally necessarily, but just in your view of things, how gender relationships, sexuality has to do with being Asian.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at. It's very complex and nuanced, and people get really heated about this topic because it's so personal.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely contentious right now. But yeah, I mean, number one, like feminism, I think goes hand in hand actually with empowering Asian women, Asian men, gender diverse people, because I think almost everyone knows about like the fetishization of Asian women and how we are like objectified, infantilized, sexualized by men around the world, and that's really dehumanizing, and that definitely plays into dating. Like, I think every Asian woman I know has an experience with a guy who like hit on them or tried to date them that was in a very like racially driven, fetishized way, and it's very uncomfortable. But I think fighting against that also goes hand in hand with fighting for Asian men to like be perceived in a more positive way, because there's also this whole history of when Chinese men started moving to America to like work on helping to build the country, they were kind of seen as a threat to white women and to white men. Yeah, pretty much. And they basically started like this kind of campaign to make Asian men look really horrible and like creepy, and you can look back at the political cartoons that were created at that time, and they just make Chinese men look like demons, like unhuman, and it's so problematic. And yeah, I think a lot of my work is about humanizing both sides, like showing like Asian men are not that way, and like they can be attractive, like they can be really cool, and like I think that goes hand in hand with also showing that Asian women aren't like these soft, submissive, like
100%.
Yeah, I think there's so many stereotypes to unpack and
like shout out to like Korean media for leading the charge right now, because like it really did make a huge difference. Like growing up, and even to this day, like to a certain extent, we're still experiencing it now. There was always a historical erasure of Asian men in media. And this is just something that it's like that people bring out like over time and like, oh, it's sensitivity, but it's like, well, no, it's literally factual. Like if you take a look at like the top 100 top movies released every single year, and you break it down by, okay, how many of these feature, white male protagonists? How many of these feature Asian male protagonists? Or Asian female protagonist, or white female protagonist. And it's like, it's very clear, like there is a non-existent, not a minority, Which would be, I think, like if it was like, oh, only, you know, I don't know where we're at right now, like what, 7% of like Asian
Not
Americans,
very high.
right? Like of all of like North American populations, right? Something like that. But like, where are we at right now? It should be, let's say like 7% would be like, great. If 7 out of every 100 Hollywood movies featured an Asian protagonist, that would be low, but positive, because that would be proportional. But there's none. And I remember this because when you're growing up and you recognize yourself in the appearance of media, it is something that you really pay attention to, right? Like, so like if you see someone Asian who is a lead, you like really pay attention to it. You're like, oh, wow, like someone who looks like me. Like it's like one of those moments you're like,
Spider-Man.
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, whoa, one of us. And I remember at the time that I was growing up, there was just like what, like there was Jet Li, there was Jackie Chan. I remember the year that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which was, you know, an Ang Lee film, won the Oscar. I think won the Oscars, and it was like this mind-blowing thing. It was huge. And then of course later we had Crazy Rich Asians, and then we had Everything Everywhere All at Once, and we're starting to see and build upon that. But this particular topic, so I'll speak about my own personal experience, because in a lot of ways I was a bad Asian. I am a bad Asian.
Love it.
In that I married a white girl, a white woman, and I love her deeply. Her race had nothing to do with, you know, our relationship. I had previously dated and, you know, been with predominantly other Asian people, and I think that it was just out of culture. Like that was just, there was an understanding of culture. You know, when I hung out with other Asians, like you don't have to explain as much.
Yeah.
You know, like you get it. You're like, oh yeah, like you understand what, like when we say things like, oh yeah, I gotta like go home. Why? Because my dad has something that needs to be done. There is like a, oh yeah, go. Not like a, what does that have to do with you? Like, you know what I'm saying?
So true.
And I feel like, and there's that like very different thing of like, you could talk to somebody in their 30s and they would say things like, you know, I want to quit my job, but I'm worried about what my parents would say. That with Asian people, we look at them being like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing that like you chat with your family about, because we're collectivist. Our families are a single unit. And when I hear that from a Western context, like there's this like moment of like what your parents would say if you quit your job because you work for them. And it's like, no, it's just because like you're supposed to honor your parents. So I feel like this particular topic is so rife for disruption. Do you think it's getting better?
You mean in terms of like romantic relationships, or?
Yeah, I'm just going to say it. Like, do you feel like the landscape for interracial relationships have shifted in the last 10 years, say?
I feel like they've definitely shifted.
Okay.
I think I would say we're making progress, but it's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely, like you mentioned, with all this Korean media coming out, like K-dramas, K-pop, that's definitely done well for lots of East Asian men, especially Korean men. You look like you have a thought on that.
I do. Like,
What are your thoughts on
because
that?
I'm really curious about the stats around this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it does. I hear from people it does. But I have yet to, I'm a nerd. I love studies. I love research. And I love like validating stuff with research. And I'm really curious about this because recently I made a post about the fact that, you know, like I was at a restaurant with my wife, and like sitting next to us was like a teenager or something like that who came up to me and like interrupted a meal, which is not done here, by the way. Like, you don't talk to other people at tables. This is just not a place you do this. It was a very outright like, oh, like his wife is gone. And he came up to me and he's like, hey, bro, can I ask, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was like, can you teach me how to pull a white girl? And it was just one of those moments that I was just like so taken aback. And so this is my question. Like, I don't know if, like, is this a thing where are we actually seeing more of this type of relationship on the ground? Because I think it's right. Like, we are definitely looking better finally. Thank God. We're allowed to have abs again in media. But is it changing the relationship landscape?
Yeah, I think I have seen studies where, like, there's that famous OkCupid study where it was
I know what you're talking about.
Asian men were the least swiped on dating apps and the least, I guess, yeah, like the least desired, which is, you know, like, come on, guys. And I
Missing
think
out.
I recently heard that has changed. Like,
Good.
That
Okay.
has changed, so Asian men are like becoming more, I guess, more swiped, like
Nice.
more desirable.
Nice.
But then at the same time, I think it's only, this empowerment kind of is only applying to a certain group of Asian men, like predominantly Korean or East Asian. I think with like Southeast Asian men or South Asian men, there's still like this. I think South Asian men are unfortunately still the lowest swipes. So I think, you know, it's still, there's still a long way to go to making sure everyone is represented. And it's like, does that come from a place of genuine like attraction, or is it more like fetishization as well? I'm not sure, because I haven't, you know, personally experienced that. I'm not an Asian guy, but yeah.
I feel like I know probably a few Asian guys out there who are probably like, you could fetishize us, it's okay. like you could objectify us like a little bit,
Yeah, it
it's
probably
fine.
feels empowering after
like for the
that
first
long.
time after going through everything else of like constantly being seen as like a desexualized, you know, figure, to be like, yeah, it's okay. Like, we don't mind having a porn category named after us.
It reminds me of, have you seen those memes of the Hongdae guys?
No,
Where, like,
what's the Hongdae guy?
it's like this Korean guy who like lives in Hongdae, and like he makes these videos and he's like pretends he's hitting on a woman. He's like, hello, are you open-minded? And like and it's like he's like fully taking advantage of like women traveling to Korea, like who
It's a
wants
thing.
to get with a Korean guy.
It's the thing. Did
And
you
it's
see
like,
that Netflix show?
Which show?
It's called My Korean Boyfriend.
No.
Oh my gosh, you gotta watch it. So it's like, it's a whole group. It's a group of women from Brazil. I want to. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting, but you gotta hear it. So it's a group of, I think it's like five women from I think Brazil,
Wow.
who are all in various stages of like wanting to be in relationship or are in relationship with Korean men, and they're all flying to Korea to like either meet Korean men that they've already started dating or want to date, etc. So like there's like different, like, so like there's one who has no boyfriend who is trying to meet a Korean guy to date. There's one who like has been like chatting with a Korean, like it's a really interesting show, and they bring up culture and family and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like Love is Blind, but specifically with Korean guys. First time I ever saw that. Fascinating.
Wow.
Anyway, please continue.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, you gotta check it out.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, I would leave that question up to like the Asian men, like if they're feeling empowered by that.
Yeah. This is what I'll
Yeah.
say. It's very validating, because if there's been a change as a result of media, then at the very least what that validates, aside from the fact that, yeah, like Korean and Asian hotties go,
Yeah.
like we're looking, you know, I don't know what the right term is. But like, at the very least, it validates that, yes, for a long time, the lack of media was very actively influencing.
Yeah.
Because we haven't changed, as far as I know. Right? Like, it's not like our skin color suddenly changed. Like, it's not like we, like, culturally suddenly changed. We are still who we are. The only thing that has changed is the media. So if we're now starting to see more matches, more dates, more interest, more women who are going on TV shows to fly to frickin' Korea to find a boyfriend, then it is coming back down to media representation has a very tangible and proven impact. Visibility results in change. It is not an us problem. It is a them problem. It is a media problem, right?
Yeah, and like I feel like there was representation for Asian men, but it was done in such an offensive,
Oh, my God.
caricaturized way. Like there's
Breakfast
this,
at Tiffany's.
Yeah, Breakfast at Tiffany's is probably the worst.
Oh God, yeah.
There's like this character named
Long Duck or something like
Dong.
that. Yeah, from 16 Candles.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his character was just like the punchline for every joke.
Yeah.
And like the joke was like his name and his accent and everything. And there have been so many Asian male characters like that in the past. And it's like, yeah, that really painted a terrible picture.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think this is starting to become a little bit of a discussion that we're starting to see. Asian comedians and influencers who use accents in their act. What's your take?
I think if it's your own culture, like I see a lot of comedians who like they'll imitate their parents or something, and not gonna lie, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think if it's your own culture, you definitely get a pass. And yeah, if you're doing an accent from another culture, though.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah. Obviously,
I'm
yeah.
not too sure.
That's a little questionable.
I think it depends on your taste in comedy, I guess.
Yeah.
If you laugh at it but you realize it's a little bit messed up, then like you're not a bad person if you're like aware.
Yeah.
But I guess the problem is if somebody watches that comedy set who's not like Chinese or Korean or whatever, and then they feel like they can do it too, then that's kind of problematic. So
for a long time, my take was that if you're telling a joke in an accent and you take away the accent and the joke stops being funny, then the joke is the accent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, and what essentially you're mocking is not the context. Because in every single joke, I love it when people are like, when you ask somebody who tells a, microaggressive, which is essentially like, I'm just going to call it out, it's racist, right? When somebody tells a racist joke and you can ask them, what's the joke? Like, I don't get the joke. Like, what's the punchline? And they kind of start to go in that defensive mode. They know what the punchline is, right? If the punchline of the joke is the culture, is the people, is the accent, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah.
If you're just a comedian and you just have an accent, or if the punchline of a joke is kind of like what you're saying, if they're laughing about like a pained experience, because that's often where comedy comes from, it's our own personal experiences, and they're talking about their mom, for example, and they are using an accent to depict that as a scene, really what they are depicting is the exaggerated impact of that experience. So you're not mocking the accent. But I think it's tough. I think there's a little bit of difficulty because at the end of the day, what you're still popularizing and permitting that stereotype being perpetuated. Yeah.
I think it's like, it's not the same thing as this, but just as a comparison, kind of like how Black people can say the N-word, but non-Black people can't. It's like, I can do my parents' accent, but if you're not from my culture, like, please don't do the accent.
Because what you're reflecting upon is like, it is actually reflection within your own inner culture, your own in-group of like, this is the experience that we had, and there is an appropriate nature behind you mocking yourself versus somebody else mocking you. And that's essentially what it is. I was reading this somewhere on the internet today that there's Asian influencers on the internet giving out C-passes. I did not realize that was a thing.
C-pass? What does that mean?
So a C-pass is an Asian person giving another person who's not Asian the right to use the C word, the slur that starts with C. And usually they're doing this for non-Asian audiences, right? They're kind of mocking the culture to play a kind of clownish character, to satirize their own culture. And whether or not it's coming from a place of like, internalized racism, I'm not going to speak on that, but it's a perpetuation and permission of it's okay to make fun of that culture. Yeah. Right? Speaking of, I love that you brought up the example of like African Americans and like their relationship with the N-word as like a thing. I remember Chris Rock once talked about this. So Chris Rock had a very famous HBO special that went out, this is years ago, in which he told a joke. I'm not going to repeat the joke, you can go look it up, but basically he said that there's a difference between Black people and N-word. And later on, like I think like a decade later, somebody asked, was there ever a joke that you have told? He's told a lot of jokes in the history. A lot of them about African Americans. And they asked, have you ever regretted a joke? And he was like, yes, I've regretted one joke, and that was the joke. And he said, the reason I regret that joke is because I started to see how many people started using the N-word because they thought that they were saying that, oh, Chris Rock said that this isn't racist. And that became a pass. And what concerns me right now, what we're seeing with this, I saw that on your Substack. You recently wrote about the what is it, the Chinese?
I'm in a very Chinese.
I'm in a very Chinese. Yeah. That's the sense that I'm getting. Like that's what it's giving, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell me about that. This is fascinating. This is trend. Okay, explain the trend.
Yeah, so the trend, there was this viral tweet that went out that someone tweeted, you met me at a very Chinese time in my life. I think it's a quote from a film.
And it's not from a Chinese influencer, is it?
It's like an anonymous Twitter account,
oh, okay.
So I don't think anyone
knows
who
okay.
it is. But yeah, I think they changed this
it was originally from like, you met me at a very strange time in my life, or whatever.
Something like that, and they changed it to a very Chinese time in my life. And then this tweet went viral, and then people just started posting all over TikTok, I'm in a very Chinese time in my life, and they would like shoot videos of themselves eating noodles or making herbal tea or drinking hot water, like very stereotypically Chinese things.
Yeah.
Sometimes there would be like that very stereotypical Oriental riff playing in the background, like the one that they play in all the scenes that are supposed to be in China in a movie where it's like ding 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 ding.
Oh gosh! Like, oh my god! Yeah, like the modern version of like the ding 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 ding. Right? Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Oh. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, it's very interesting because I've seen some Chinese people react to this trend and they're like, this is awesome, like let me teach you more about my culture, like let me like welcome in, like we want to be celebrated. And I think that's a really beautiful way to perceive it. But then there's other people who are like, wait, like we as a culture have been through so much, like how can you say that you're Chinese now? Like this feels kind of like it's kind of framed as if it's appreciation, but it can also be perceived as appropriation because often it perpetuates these stereotypes about Chinese people. So yeah, it's very interesting just kind of seeing how culture continues to shift and like be portrayed in media.
Yeah, so this is, I actually haven't looked into this. I'm really curious about it, but I want to have very frank, curious discussions around it. I feel like, for example, like when you talk to a lot of Chinese people, they're like, there's no such thing as cultural appropriation. They don't understand the history or what it means, right? Because for them, they're proud of their culture, which is great. You should be. And the idea of cultural appropriation a lot of times gets misunderstood, and I even think by some groups of people almost like maliciously misunderstood, so they could like point to the extremes in order to attack it. So my understanding of cultural appropriation is that it's about mockery, right? It's like if you are wearing something because you appreciate a culture, or you're eating the type of food because you appreciate the culture, there's nothing wrong with it. What is wrong with it is like if you're wearing, let's say, like the classic example, like native chief headdress, and it's costuming of a culturally sacred item, or you are doing something as a mockery of something, right? And other than that, it's appreciation. So in this kind of depiction of I'm going through a very Chinese period of my life, the core issue, well, like what is the core issue that is being kind of brought up, that is uncomfortably being tiptoed around?
Yeah, I think it is like that fine line between appropriation or appreciation, because I think there's some people who participate in these trends, and like there's a lot of non-Chinese people who genuinely like really appreciate Chinese culture and want to learn about it and have a lot of respect for it. And then there's people where, like you said about the accents, like the Chinese part is like a punchline, and it's like kind of, it's meant to be a funny reel. But when you strip it back, it's like, oh, what's the funny part? It's that this person's like
is it being used?
Chinese.
Yeah, is it being used as a joke to perpetuate stereotypes, or is it generally like, hey, cool, like I mean, like the hot water thing I never understood, because I'm like, it's just nice to be drinking warm water.
Right?
Like, you don't always want to drink cold water.
It's so much better. I don't understand.
I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like, I'm like stepping into my like Asian uncle phase now,
Yes.
where I'm kind of like, yeah, like hot water is just better. Like it's better on your body. Like it doesn't mess with your, like it's not as intense. He says as he drinks a cold glass of water. But it's about like are you wearing it as a costume, or are you actually appreciating something and sharing your excitement for its appreciation?
Exactly.
That's the core of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you brought up the example of like wearing indigenous like headdresses and attire, and it's like you see people doing that like on fashion runways in bikinis, and it's like, this was not the original intent or meaning behind this. And I was actually looking into kind of this concept of pretendians in the indigenous community, which are basically non-indigenous people who try to claim that they're indigenous so they can benefit from having that identity, and like, you know, you can get grants and like all these different opportunities.
Horrible thing to do.
Yes.
What the hell?
Yes. And like these people will be like, oh, like I'm like 1/16 Cherokee or something, therefore I'm indigenous.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a very contentious issue within the indigenous community. But just looking at how those communities have approached it, where they're very much like, even if you have like a drop of ancestry, like that's not enough. It's culture is about being part of a community and having the shared experience. You can't claim a culture for yourself. Like the culture has to claim you as their own. And so I think that's kind of like the line between appreciation and appropriation.
Absolutely.
Is like, does that community actually welcome you? Do they claim you? And do you have like mutual respect and care for that community?
Absolutely.
So if you're participating in this trend and you actually like have no respect for Chinese people, that's problematic. But if you genuinely care and like want to learn more about the culture and like advocate for Asian people who are getting hate crimed and stuff, then I think that's a bit more acceptable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is incredible. Thank you so much for the conversation. How do people find out more about Bad Asian and what you talk about, and where do people find you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's always so fun to talk to you. So you can find me on Instagram at Katy Ho, KATYHO _ and then my Substack is called Bad Asian, and you can find it at katyho.substack.com.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to, share a couch with you and actually be able to chat in person. A lot of my times I'm doing these Zoom calls, and as much as I love talking to people over Zoom, there's something different about, to me, I think the greatest thing that we can do for our community right now is create spaces of deeper conversation like this. To be frank, to be direct, to be unpolished, to be raw, and to chat. Because it is in the isolation that I think that most people are struggling and falling through cracks. And as always, one thing I love saying, which is, when we rise together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for creating the space for these conversations.